Hey Jessica, how are you?
Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. So tell me, what's going on for you? How could I help?
So, I've actually been studying for the LSAT since last year. I took it for the first time in November. Did not do as well as I wanted to. Started studying again. I took a few breaks, about 3 months, started studying again. And honestly, my score is not improving. I plan to take it again in October. I was planning on September, but dates have changed, so October. So now thinking about extending it to November again.
I hear you. I hear you. What would you say is the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Oh God, timing. I'm gonna say timing. I feel like I'm running short on time to get the score that I want. As
Yeah,
much time as I put in or effort that I put in, I feel like there's not enough time.
I hear that. Is there a certain section that gives you particular trouble?
Logical reasoning, for sure. The strength and weekend questions have always killed me. I did well for a few weeks, and then I don't know what happened.
I hear that. And how are you going about the process right now?
So what I'm doing is, I'm doing practice tests every weekend. I take the whole week to review the practice tests that I did, and then on top of that, I use Khan Academy. I'm using the Bibles, and I review the conclusions. I review all the major steps, so the basic steps to it. And along with that is the answer choices, which I'm struggling mostly on the answer choices, not really so much on the conclusions and the premises.
So that could be the key right there, actually. So when it comes to review, what does your review process look like?
So I break it down. I break it down by conclusion, and then I try to explain it to myself. I go along with the answer choices and then try to fit in the answer choices with the conclusions, trying to figure out how it is that I got that. But the LSAT, all the answer choices just sound similar or they all sound great. So it's kind of tricky to choose the right one. So I think that would be my struggle right now is between the answer choices.
Okay, do you find yourself comparing the choices to each other a lot?
Haven't thought about that. I wouldn't say so, no. I think if anything, I just use my information, which I know you're not supposed to do that, but I try to use my information to make it make sense for me.
I hear that. And common sense is fine. Like things like days of the week going in a certain order, that's fine. Or that rain makes you wet. Like rain is water. Like those are things that you can assume, those are safe to know. But going outside too far, obviously not okay. But I want to bring it back to this answer choice thing because I think that really is the
Mhm.
key here. Obviously, you've got to understand the stimulus in depth, and too many people don't spend enough time there. So I'm glad you're spending the time there. But you've also got to look at the answer choices, specifically what is tempting about the wrong answer that makes it seem appealing and what
Mhm.
ultimately makes it wrong. And what's discouraging about the right answer that pushes you away from it and what ultimately makes it correct.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So it's the thought process that you're bringing to the choices specifically. Obviously, LSAC knows how people think. They're playing on those common misconceptions and traps.
And I fall for it. I do tend to fall for it. But no, yeah, I am spending a lot of time on the conclusions. But maybe my problem is that I'm not spending enough time on the premises and just trying to figure out, how the conclusion can relate to the rest of the passage.
Okay, so that's another thing. We're talking about just evaluating the reasoning in a stimulus itself, asking how reasonable is this? What's the gap? Is this a fundamentally flawed argument, or are they simply failing to consider something? And there's not a right or a wrong answer on that all the time. It's really more about just engaging actively in the process.
Right, that's right.
So I'm going to recommend a resource for you. I've taught an hour-long class on what I call the Socratic review method, where I go in depth on exactly this process I laid out for you here to analyze where your misunderstanding stems from. I talked about answer choices here during this call today, but I also talk about the question stem. I also talk about the stimulus, and you could apply this exact same strategy to reading comprehension also.
Okay. And that's the worst one that I'm doing, and is the reading comp. Um, yeah, but at this point, I feel like I should focus more on the logical reasoning since I am struggling with that. And then with analytical, I'm doing pretty well, I would say.
Great. Yeah, and what you do in logical reasoning here will carry over to reading comp as well to some extent.
That's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, it will. So I'll send you that link. Take a look at that and then start applying it. Like actually write things down or talk them out. not just doing it all in your head.
Mm-hmm. And another thing is that since I'm using Khan Academy and I've used it for, I'm going to say maybe a year and a half at this point, I'm getting to the point now where I remember the questions and the passages, and it's just easier for me, to get to the right answer. So I'm trying to stay away from that. But at this point, I don't know what to do. I feel like I've done every single test.
Well, Khan recycles a lot of the same questions because they have a very limited set of questions that LSAT gave them. So I wouldn't make Khan your only source of prep. I would go far beyond that as well. One thing I would say is get the other actual exams. You can get them in books of 10 on Amazon, or you can get them as part of Law Hub on LSAT's site in the digital LSAT format. But don't limit yourself to just what Khan is giving you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I have two books of 10 different practice tests, so 20 in total. On top of that, I also have the Khan Academy, but they are the books that I used for the last time I was studying. So it's the same problem I'm having, but I might just need to get more books.
Yeah, get some more exams.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got the time to use them.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions that you wanted to cover today? Anything else on your mind?
I would say maybe just tips on how to tackle the logical reasoning. Maybe, basic tips that could help me.
Oh, I've got so much on the YouTube channel and the podcast and the LSAT blog. I don't want to just rehash that stuff. I want to get into the more personal things that are really holding you back specifically.
Okay. Then another thing would be my personal statement. I would have to explain my GPA. It was not the greatest, but I was very involved when I was in school. So do you have any tips on that?
Well, so why was your GPA lower than it could have been?
I was a comms major. I was doing my third and fourth year of undergrad. I did about 4 different internships. On top of that, I was doing work study. I was working, and I was, going to school full time. I was also really involved in the community. I did a lot of community service. So I think that distracted me a lot from the actual studies, and I was focusing more on getting the experience that I wanted, just so that I could get a job right away. Yeah, and that, I'm not gonna lie, that did affect my grades a lot.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, you could write a very brief addendum just explaining that and talking about how you learned from the process in terms of overextending yourself, getting too involved in extracurriculars and other activities when academics maybe should have been a higher priority. So that is something you could cover, but keep it really concise. They'll always tell you to write an addendum just because they want to get you off the phone, but you can, it's okay, but just keep it really brief. Okay. Keep it succinct, keep it short to the point. Don't make it a major focus of your application. There's so many other things that are positive that you could talk about instead.
So you would recommend maybe noting down all my achievements?
Well, that'll be on your resume. What I'm saying is,
yeah,
as an explanation of why your GPA was lower than it could have been, I would talk about how you devoted X hours per week to all these other things. Not that that was necessarily the right way to go on it, of course, because they're going to value GPA over most other things, except for the LSAT. But you could mention that briefly in a way just to show that you weren't like wasting your time, that you were doing something productive. It just wasn't, it just ended up being at the expense of your GPA.
That's right. That's right.
And they'll see on your resume all the great stuff that you did, and that'll certainly help there.
Okay. That's good to know. Do you recommend it being maybe a page long, or would you say maybe less? Less,
okay. Just maybe 100 or 200 words at most.
Very quick. Okay, that's good to know. I'll start working on that as well. And yeah, I'm going to say that's what's been on my head lately is logical reasoning, trying to figure out why it is that I'm getting the wrong answer choices, figure out where it is that I'm messing up aside from the conclusions, which it is in the answer choices, and getting started on the application process. Hopefully I'll be ready by November. That's my goal.
Awesome, Jessica. Well, I'm glad we were able to connect. Please keep in touch and let me know if you need anything moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.